Everyone, we're going to call the meeting of the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee to order. I am joined by Vice Mayor Gallegos, Councilman, I just forgot your last name, Valenzuela.
Pastor.
Councilwoman Pastor. Minutes of the meeting. Anyone?
I approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have two consent items. Anyone have any questions, or do I have a motion?
I move items 2 and 3.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 4 is for information only. Hearing no one asking for anything. And 5 is also the Citizens Transportation Commission meetings. Anyone have any questions, comments? Hearing none, we will go to item 6 is for information only. It is the
2050.
2050 maintenance of payment for arterial and major collector streets and bicycle facilities for fiscal years 18 and 19. And I do have a comment on this. I have had complaints from people about certain streets, and staff were given different times and said they would be completed or done to repair, and they are not on the list. So could you please have your staff check with my staff and make sure that they are covered, because we have since told the people who are complaining, and these are usually multiple complaints, to make sure that we are giving good information to our constituents.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
One quick comment for me as well.
Go ahead.
We have from some requests from folks, particularly in the Levine and South Phoenix areas of the district, for better coordination between our streets programs, water programs, and other infrastructure in the area. So I have some constituents who have now construction, like in the 35th Avenue and Southern Baseline area, on 3 sides of their neighborhoods, and so they are feeling that that's led to congestion and occasionally gridlock, and that they would love it if we could just work to make sure they have good routes. And they're finally feeling they're getting their fair share of infrastructure, but maybe more than their fair share. And so there's been some rough traffic patterns, and they would love it if we could do more just to coordinate so that not every street in the area is under construction at the same time.
Madam Chair and Vice Mayor, yes, we'll follow up on that. As you know, there's going to just be a lot more construction with the South Mountain Freeway as well. So we're going to try to be working together with all of the elements that are, under construction out there in the area.
Fabulous. It's good that we're building, but they did want to make sure that they can get in and out of the neighborhoods without a helicopter advising them on a path to take.
Oh, picky.
Yep.
Regarding that, how are the neighborhoods notified of construction, and when an end date or possible end date, so that they know that their traffic patterns are going to change?
So, Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, depending on the type of project, if it's a pavement restoration, pavement preservation type of project, we normally advise the people that are going to be affected, either if it's a residential or a corridor, arterial or collector. And so we do provide sometimes door hangers, and we advise the community based on that. And usually it's something that it's coming up typically between 2 to 3 weeks, but we do advise them about that. When it's a bigger project, some of the bigger projects that we have out there, we do have a public information team that's working with our staff, and then working also with the community, working with the council offices to make sure that we're disseminating the information pertaining to different phases of the project itself, the bigger project itself, and making sure we're providing that information. In addition to, we're not the only ones out there. We have the county. There's several county areas in the southwest area, as well as the Arizona Department of Transportation. So we also work with them to try to make sure that we're not building something and then they're ripping it out with their particular projects. And so we're doing that as well with those other agencies.
So then there is what I'm hearing, there is coordination among the different agencies and people are notified. And how early?
Depending on the project, if it's an pavement preservation, it's a couple of weeks prior to
Okay.
what we're doing out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we will go to item 7, which is streetlights.
LED.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, just want to express my thanks to the subcommittee for all of your involvement in this project with LED streetlights. And this project, or this presentation today, is actually going to cover both parks lighting and streets lighting. And so we'll start with the parks, or the streets lighting, and then we'll transition into the parks lighting components. So again, thank you to the subcommittee and all of your involvement with this process. This is really good news for the community on several aspects. We've got a great proposal to bring forward to you for the conversion of all nearly 100,000 streetlights throughout the city to light emitting diode, LED energy saving lights. And so those lights do just that. They save energy. There are significant dollar savings on the use of energy, but there's also significant dollar savings on an annual basis on the maintenance of the lights. And so the other great thing about this project and the way this is played out for us is that it's really been a good demonstration of how the community can get involved in this type of project and provide lots of input and give us their perspective, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But it's really a demonstration how the city wants to hear from the public about potential impacts of lighting on their neighborhoods, and we've responded. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about is the Kelvin level of lighting, maybe something that a lot of us never thought we'd know about lighting, and how what that means for our community. So we'll get to that in just a second. On this slide here, we just kind of get into why we're doing this project. We're doing LED lights because of the lower cost and the lower maintenance. In almost all cases, the LED lights are better lighting. At varying color levels, we see enhanced lighting. They're more directional. There's less spillover of the LED lights into neighborhoods and into the sky and into homes. And so that's a really big value. And it also has the environmental aspect because of the lower energy demand. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray Dovalina, our Street Transportation Director, to give a little bit more explanation of the streetlight project.
Thank you, Mario. Madam Chair and council members, with me I have Charlene Reynolds. She's actually Deputy Director over Aviation. She's still working with us and trying to get through our project, our program for this. So she's been working diligently with our staff and her staff, basically helping us get through this program, as well as Inger Erickson. There's 3 elements out of this presentation that we're going to have, but they're going to be 3 separate actions. So the first one is the LED streetlights, and then we're going to go into the park-related type of items. So as Mario mentioned, we've been working extensively, not only within the department, but also working with other departments. And it's about a partnership, not only with the utility companies that we've been working on for a long time, developing the LED type of light, but also, as Mario mentioned, it's a collaboration with the community. And this slide shows you 2 different perspectives. The top left side is showing the street lights that we did a pilot program for a survey. We had between 1,000 to 1,500 folks that responded to this survey. It's in the Lindo Park area and in the southwest area of Phoenix. And that shows your existing lights, and then picture A and B is basically the difference of the type of light that we had. At that time, when we did this study, we were looking at 4,000 Kelvin and 3,000 Kelvin. So you can see the different types of lights that we had. With that survey, we actually had pretty much a 50-50 split on which light they liked between picture A and picture B. With regards to the bottom right pictures, that's the park area lighting. So as you can see, you have the existing lights, and then we have the option A and option B. And folks had actually they had that one survey, they had a 60-40 with the 4,000 light being the more recommended, or at least the survey. Yeah.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, that's accurate, but it was pretty close. It was 60-40 on the parks one. It was just slightly different.
Is that 60-40, 60 going with option B?
Actually, it was 60-40 with option A.
Option A, okay.
So as Mario mentioned, as the discussion of the Kelvin level lighting, basically Kelvin is just the color temperature of the type of light, and you can see there with the bar graph there, it basically goes from the lowest Kelvin level is the yellowish light, and then the higher the Kelvin is the more bluish, whiter, and up to the bluish light. And so we're, based on a lot of discussions with regards to what's come out this summer. This summer, the American Medical Association came out with a study recommending under 3,000 Kelvin. And so at this point, we're looking at staff recommending 2,700 Kelvin. Also, this would mean that we would be changing the street light standard that we have right now at 4,000 Kelvin to a new standard of 2,700 Kelvin. So with this, I'll pass it over to Charlene, and she'll talk about the procurement process that we did for this RFP.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Staff issued the RFP in late February 2016, and then we received 12 proposals, which represented 22 offers under the capital-only, enhanced capital, and financing models. The evaluation panel then met for 2.5 days to review the technical submissions, and during this process, one firm was deemed non-responsive, 5 firms were moved forward and/or shortlisted under the capital-only model, and 4 firms were moved to the shortlist interview process for the enhanced capital model. Also at this time, the panel made a decision to forego evaluating the financing proposals that were received. They thought that it would be in the best interest of the city to have those reviewed and evaluated by the city's chief financial officer, because there was a thought process that potentially that the city could receive better financing on its own. After that process, 2 days of interviews were conducted with the shortlisted firms in late August. And after that, all the firms in that process were requested to submit best and final offers. The panel met again for a full day, and based upon the initial technical evaluation, the interview process, and the best and final, they considered that. They went through, asked a lot of questions, and they finalized their scores. And basically, the panel recommended that Ameresco be awarded a contract by the city for either the capital and/or the enhanced capital model. Also, during this process, the panel recommended that the enhanced capital model would be in the best interest of the city. They made this based upon the enhanced capital model allows for the city not only to purchase lights, also to conduct a full audit of the city's existing lighting system. That will include an analysis of whether streets are underlit, overlit, if they're missing poles, and it also will confirm the city's actual number of street lights. We believe it's 96,000 lights. They will confirm that through GIS. They will bring that information back to city staff, so a full analysis can be conducted and additional considerations can be made by staff for future street lighting conditions. So basically, we wanted to show you the scores for the process for the enhanced capital model. The 4 finalists, again, were interviewed and they submitted best and final offers. Here are the respective scores. Out of 1,000 points, Ameresco was awarded 890. You have HMS Construction was issued 744 points, Siemens 770, and Sylvania 725. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Ray for a discussion about the actual financing, and costs associated with the project. Thank you.
Charlene. So this slide shows basically the base cost, including all of the other elements that we're looking at for this potential contract. So the base cost is roughly about $24.5 million. We're looking at a 10-year warranty that's a little bit under $2 million, but this is in addition to an already included a two-year manufacturer's warranty. So we're actually getting 2 years plus another 10 years on top of that warranty. So that's a big benefit for us. So the total contract for Ameresco, we'd be looking at about $26.5 million. And then to do the work and oversee the work, basically contract management of that, we're looking at about $2 million. For the total installation of this project would be about $28.5 million. When you look at an annual savings, looking at the recycling, looking at the energy savings, overall, we're looking at about $1.5 million of savings during that time frame. It might fluctuate depending upon what elements are being done at the early stage, like recycling, things of that nature, but also the uppers and maintenance of it. It's going to get greatly reduced. So looking at that. And then overall, in a 15-year savings, we're looking at a $22 million cumulative savings across that time frame. So it's a big benefit for us to look at the savings and how we pay basically the capital investment of this. And so working with our finance department, as we look at the savings per year, if they're higher, the goal would be to pay down the debt sooner than later. And so the goal would be as fast as we can get this project moving, the faster we can pay the debt service on the overall project on this.
If I can just add one thing to, and when we look at the numbers, I would just want to clarify and make it clear that then when we talk about net savings, that's the savings after we make the annual debt payment that is estimated. So that would be on top of that. And so one of the things that Ray talked about was the warranty period. And the reason that's super important to us, not only does it help us make sure that those maintenance savings are going to be there, but it also makes sure that we get a warranty that goes beyond the anticipated debt term. So the debt term's about 10 years. And so the warranty actually goes beyond that. And so we are allowed to make sure to pay that off during that time. And the recommendation, like Ray said, of the chief financial officer is that the net savings early on be used to pay off that debt sooner.
Mario, are 9 and 10 included in this presentation? I just wanted to make sure.
So at this
For the
point,
parks?
for this piece of it, we're only talking about the LED street lights. And so the action that we'll be requesting here will only relate to LED street lights and not be related to items 9 and 10. After we do the action related to street lights, then we would get into items 9 and 10. The
But
financing,
you're talking about the same company.
no, actually no, different
Oh,
companies.
okay.
We had to do different procurements because the nature of the projects and scope was very different and fell under different procurement rules. So we've had to separate those.
Great, thank you.
The financing component that I talked about only applies to the street lights.
Okay.
So thanks, Mario. So Madam Chair and council members, this is our recommendation for you all to accept. First, to recommend the awarding of the contract to Ameresco. The second item is to change and revise the current Kelvin lighting from 4,000 to 2,700 Kelvin. And then in addition to that, recommend issuing an excise tax obligation not to exceed $30 million. So this is the recommendation that staff has provided for today regarding this program.
We have cards. Would you prefer to hear the cards first? Okay. James Malecki? Yes, she may. Cynthia?
Good morning, members of the subcommittee. It's been a very interesting 16 months. I've learned a lot, and I really want to commend members of the council and especially their staff for talking to citizens like me so we can express our opinions, provide information. But I also want to say thank you to those neighborhood groups. They listened. These people volunteer their time. And when City Hall does it right, they listen to those neighborhood groups, the citizen review boards. Again, I'm really proud of Phoenix for leading the way as a major city, doing it right the first time. Thank you.
And thank you for all your hard work, both of you. We will miss seeing you here all the time. Oh, good, good, because you're very good at it now. Dan Herring?
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Dan Herring. I'm here representing Amoresco's Southwest Regional Leadership Team, which is officed just down the road in your neighbor of the city of Tempe. Amoresco is very proud and humbled that we're being recommended to implement this project. There's lots to consider with a project this complicated and technical, and I think it's important that maybe you consider the fact that Amoresco's pedigree with this type of work is long and extensive. We've done this sort of exact work for over 10 years. Over the past several years, we've been installing and retrofitting LED streetlights as the current technology from the Pacific Northwest to Eastern Canada, the Eastern U.S., to the state of Texas, and most recently, 90 miles south in the city of Tucson. Because this project is so logistically interesting and technically challenging, we felt like assembling a hand-picked team of people that know this business, know the manufacturer, know each other, and know the city was very important. And we would hope that you would consider the fact that this team includes the same lighting manufacturer that we're using at the city of Tucson, the same installer that we're using at the city of Tucson, and also the fact that Amoresco has a history of doing street projects in the city of Phoenix in the past, even retrofitting LED traffic lights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. James, I'm sorry, I thought you were having her speak for you. I should have known better. But it's good to see you moving.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Yes, please, I apologize for the informality of my attire, recovering from some spinal cord injury. I saw the recommendation from city staff at 2,700, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I did a double take and got whiplash from my reaction. I wanted to say congratulations to the neighborhood groups on a grassroots level, to city council and their unbelievable staff, as well as the city departments. And I wanted to just share, so we discussed a lot regarding the AMA, regarding the CEPTED recommendations, also comply with the 2,700. But if I may, just to reflect a little bit about the process that occurred during these 16 wonderful months in which we got to know Mr. Dovalina, for example, much better than I'm sure he had ever hoped. Mr. Hartman, for example. There were times in which the relationship between neighborhood groups and department staff almost seemed adversarial. City council members were kind of caught in the middle a little bit, and they were very much so hearing both sides along with their city staff. And perhaps through that adversarial process, a lot of good came out of it because discussion was fostered. I really think that even though it took a little longer than maybe we had first hoped, the process that occurred in that engagement between neighborhood level folks, city department staff, and city council members has shown to be very, very advantageous. And one of the byproducts that has occurred as a result is folks like Nicole Rodriguez, who really picked up the mantra and did a lot of organizing of other neighborhood groups in which they recognized that this was not just about lights. There was a much more bigger picture of this. And and part of that bigger picture was, how does the city of Phoenix work in partnership with their neighborhood groups? And how do we collectively come together to find the best decisions and come up with with what I certainly believe to be the best choice that we could have made? I'm excited that that consortium is not just stopping because the lights are going up. So as we've seen an evolution of these neighborhood groups occur in the city, I would also add that I've seen an evolution within the city departments in that very short period of time. And I hope that that relationship that is now begun as a result of this particular project is ongoing. You have a readily made available access to a number of neighborhood groups with one phone call. Please, let's continue to utilize that as an opportunity to continue to make Phoenix such a wonderfully run city. Again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Bob, and I'm not sure what the last name is. It's G-E-O, and then from there, I'm not sure.
My message would be somewhat redundant to Dan's. I'm with Amoresco. Should I pass?
You should probably go to
It's,
the mic.
you need to go to the mic, and it's up to you.
Council members, subcommittee, my name is Bob Georgioff. I'm responsible for the western half of the U.S. So I'd just like to thank you for your consideration. And as we get acquainted just a little bit about the company, our roots in Arizona go back 20 years and served many government institutions, most notably like Arizona State, where we continue to provide innovative energy projects. It's a large company that's capable of bonding $150 million projects with a small company feel. And I think Dan alluded to that by the partners. We had received beneficial pricing based on scale and really took some time to get local contracting communities. So we are familiar with the issues that are important to Arizona, heat issues, contracting community, and blue sky, which Dan alluded to in some of our other projects. So in essence, just thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, you may.
You mentioned that you're using the same manufacturing facility as the Tucson contract. Where is the manufacturing facility?
Lenny? Or can I defer to Acuity?
We've got actually 17 manufacturing facilities all throughout North America.
Wonderful. So they're manufacturing in North America.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Daniel Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I'm really echoing the same message you might hear a few times, but I'm also with Amoresco, kind of echoing some of the points that Charlene made at the beginning. This is a process that we're well aware that you've been striving and journeying on for 2.5 years now, and we're thrilled to see where the city's at. We're thrilled to be a part of it, to have been humbled by the opportunity to have been recommended for award. I would just reiterate that the solutions within our proposal are distinct and customized to the city of Phoenix, really on what Dan said, really on the what, the who, and the how. Those are really the three things that differentiate our proposal and our response around all of the criteria that you came up with for this RFP. So we're thrilled to be a part of it. We're very excited, echoing some of the comments made earlier on the way that the city of Phoenix is partnering with neighborhoods, the way that they're making this decision, and the way that you're planning to move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Leonard Beard.
Yet again, another person from Amoresco. But I actually wanted to come up and to echo what your community involvement people have said. The fact that you arrived at a conclusion to use 2700 Kelvin fixtures and to protect the dark skies, coming from Tucson, where the International Dark Sky Association is headquartered, and gone through the process of developing their project to ensure that we were dealing with the astronomical community and making sure that we protected the skies for everyone. The fact that you've arrived at that conclusion is a pretty great thing. So that's a leadership position nationwide that I think all of you should be very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brian McDonald. Thank you. Is in favor. Fritz Freiten? I'm
also with Amoresco, and our other members have said everything I would have said.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve Gitlin?
Good morning, Steve Gitkin. I am with Siemens, and if you had noticed on the scores from the presentation, Siemens came in second place in the evaluation. And Siemens is a $90 billion company, and we're not typically in the mode of whining and complaining about evaluation process. And as Charlene pointed out many times, we have not formally protested this recommendation. We do feel it's important that the subcommittee and the council understand that there were some significant inaccuracies and inconsistencies in the proposal evaluation. The most recent one that came to light was the city suggested that Siemens changed the fixtures that we were proposing in our best and final offer. I'll reiterate again, that is 100% inaccurate. 100% inaccurate. We did not change. No one asked us. There's no documentation in regards to that. We did not change our fixtures. On top of that, the Siemens proposal is somewhere between 1.5 and $800,000 or $900,000 lower than Amoresco's. And we had a debate this morning on whose price is lower. And I think the subcommittee, at minimum, should take some time to reevaluate the recommendations and understand exactly what the true costs are and the value of both solutions. We don't feel that Siemens scores were reflective of what we offered.
May I ask why you didn't protest?
So this was an RFP process and not a low bid process. So there are some subjective pieces. For example, they liked Amoresco's interview better than ours, and maybe they got some additional points. So we are fine with that, but there are some critical areas like the life cycle cost evaluation where we are lower, where we received a lower score. So we're concerned about the evaluation. In the big scheme of why we didn't protest, our experience with protests are all the lawyers get involved and everybody puts their guard up. We wanted to have an open dialogue. Siemens has a lot of business with the city of Phoenix. We want to continue having a good relationship, and that's why we didn't protest.
Thank you. That's all the cards we have. Do we have questions, comments from the subcommittee?
Oh.
Motion?
It looks like we have one, John.
Oh, sorry. What?
Craig? We just know him.
I'm not sure
We
what happened.
know
to
you,
the
but I don't
cards
have your
or
card,
the-
but go ahead.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Is it in there? No. Oh, sorry.
Right here.
Council members, I just wanted you to be able to look at some examples of how much this has changed in the last year that I've been working on this. What I've learned while I was learning more about LED lights was that the blue spike is greatly reduced by the decision that the city has made going at 2700 Kelvin. You can see on the chart that there's much less blue light at that level. That is a tremendous step forward, and Phoenix is going to be leading the country in making this smart decision. I want to thank the staff that has answered questions for me, have met with me, and others from Sunny Slope neighbors who have been concerned about this over the last year. We're very impressed with what the city has done, and what I have learned in this process is that there's 101 things in the air at a time, and this was one of them that was important to us, and they took that and fine-tuned it. I'm just asking one more thing to take a look at, and that's the brightness. Other major cities have learned two things. Kelvin, too high, and we are much lower now and much better. But the brightness of the LEDs do not confirm or do not relate to the guides that planners use. And IES is in the process of doing new guides and fine-tuning these bright figures, usually in watts or lumen. What I have found is when cities let communities decide, 35-watt light fixtures are tuned down to 19. LEDs have many advantages, including dimmers, but getting the lights right in the beginning saves energy. Putting in twice as many lights in a park is not going to save much energy. Fine-tuning those fixtures to lower levels where the human eye works well and is bright enough to meet the needs of parks and neighborhoods can be accomplished, and other cities have done that. Thank you again for this major step at 2700 Kelvin.
Yeah, I did find your card, but you marked number 10. So which is the parks?
One was 7 and one was
Oh,
10.
okay, well, we help. Nevertheless,
I'm still learning on the cards.
that's fine, and I take your comments apply to both items.
Yes, they do, actually. I covered both, so that takes care of that.
Thank you. Did we miss anyone else? Okay, we're going, no news? Okay. Comments, questions, motion?
I have a question, and it's relating to Craig's comment. What is our brightness? What have we chosen, or what is our guideline for brightness? Or have we even looked at that?
So Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, currently right now with our high-pressure sodium, they're less than 2700. So they're probably in the 2600. So the current lights that we have, they're a lot more yellowish, not as bright as the current light. So currently, as I mentioned before this recommendation, we have a 4000 Kelvin standard that we're changing. We're asking to change that to 2700. So there is they're more bright if it's a 4000, a lot less brighter if we look at 2700.
My understanding is Kelvin is the heat.
Color temperature.
Color temperature,
Yes.
and then there's the kelvins. I've learned this. I don't know the exact term, but there's two terms that we speak about when we deal with LED lights. So
There's lumens and,
yes,
and
it's
foot candles.
So I think that's kind of what we're talking about.
For the most part, all of the specifications that we've looked at for all of the 2700, 3000, 3500, and 4000, all of those types of lights that we have in the procurement process that we've gone through meet our photometrics. I don't have the specific lumens of each individual, but the photometrics for our spacing of our street lights that we have right now all of these lights meet that. So 2700 does meet our photometric layout that we have.
I think this gentleman wants to.
I know, but we
He
don't.
probably has the experts. Oh,
He
sorry.
can clarify the.
Is this our
lumens.
expertise?
Hopefully. So similar to, since we just did the City of Tucson project, and part of that was a lumen study to understand what the lumens were before we started and what the lumens are after, we actually applied that same process to the base fixtures that were proposed for your facilities. And the lumen reduction just on the basic 1-to-1 retrofit is about 35%. However, and I'll say we haven't undertaken the full study yet, which is part of the process that will follow your award, if you will. So during that process on the City of Tucson, we actually ended up with a total lumen reduction of 62.7%.
Okay.
And that's basically focused on getting the right amount of light onto the roadways or in the neighborhoods versus too much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question, Vice Mayor?
So the vote today is to issue $30 million in excise tax obligations, and it looks like the contract is for $26.5 million. And then there's $2 million for contract management. Does that mean the $30 million would include contract management?
Yes, Vice Mayor, the costs that we know that we're going to need for management of that contract and installation of those lights during that time, we'll need for the financing to cover that as well.
So usually we would often do that with a different financing, because that would be just city staff managing a contract.
In this case, because it's such a large project and we're doing so many lights within such a short time on an expedited schedule, the contract management has to be very intensive, and so that's why that's such a big component of that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments?
And then one thing I didn't realize till today that I think is good news is it's wonderful that there are so many suppliers in North America, because if we are moving so quickly, it'll be good to have diverse suppliers and be able to keep going. I used to work at Salt River Project, and as we were ramping up with our light bulb program, there was huge supply chain problems getting bulbs from Asia. And we apparently owned like every light bulb in Arizona and still couldn't meet our programs at the time because they weren't coming in. So it's wonderful they're being supplied out of North America. Hopefully maybe even someday in Arizona if there's so many projects here. But I think that's a good piece of news. Thanks.
Anything else? May I have a motion? No one wants to make a motion? I will tell you, I've had many questions about this, as staff knows. When this began years ago, I was told there would be a much greater savings, but we were also talking 4,000, which I understand has greater savings. Many things have transpired since that time. Staff come in and we went over the financing and fine-tooth comb. I also was surprised I didn't understand that the rebates that we get for the savings. So I will make the motion and agree to support to award the contract to Ameresco. Am I getting close? Revise the city standard to allow 2,700 Kelvin and recommend ordinance to issue exercise tax obligations not to exceed $30 million. Less is good. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do we now do the parks?
Now we go to parks, which is items 9 and 10 on the agenda.
I meant
9 and 10.
Oh. Okay.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, I am here today, Inger Erickson with the Parks and Recreation Department, to talk to you about parks and recreation lights and why LED. We have aged infrastructure, as you can see. We have the old beehive fixtures there in one of the parks. In our parking lots, we have some old lights that emulate some of the street lights from the past as well. The reason we need to do this is because of aged infrastructure. We do want to increase our energy efficiencies, and over the life of the LED lights, there will be reduced maintenance. So our timeline, we are a pay-as-you-go. We did not need to finance because we have the Parks Preserve Initiative funds, and this is specifically for those types of projects. This would be area lighting around the parks. So when you take a walk around the path, this would be those areas there. We started this process in May, and as you can see, we went through, this was a job order contract process as opposed to the RFP process that you just heard about. The first, we had 17 submitters for the qualifications. We narrowed it down to 4, and from those 4 firms, we selected 2, which is Hawkeye Electric and Sellers & Sons. Those were the 2 that were selected. The criteria, here's the criteria for how we made those decisions on the second round of the second step of the job order contract. And again, it was 100 points overall. And we had a panel that did that as well. The job order contract projects that are identified right away, Acacia, Maryvale, Coulter, and Mahatak. And so we have a 3-year contract with two 1-year extensions, $5 million over the course of the contract. What will be included in this will be the electrical wiring, the engineering, any of the boxes that are needed to hold the electrical power. And as you can see, these are an example of the new lights. They will have concrete poles, which again will be better for us. The poles we had in the past, when the water hits the metal pole, it would make it not as stable, and so this will last us a lot longer, and so these are a good quality fixture. And so our recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Department is that the job order LED contract be awarded to Hawkeye Electric and Seller & Sons. And the way that works is if we have 3 projects going and one can do 2 of the projects, the other one might do the 3rd one, whoever's got the least amount available, so we can go to either one of those, and that's how those processes would work. So we have 2 that we can select from.
You have questions? Questions? No? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And they will be 2,700. Help. All right, the next item that we have great partners in neighborhood services, and there was an opportunity to improve our lighting situation, enhance lighting in the parks, and also improve some facilities. So through this, we're going to add lights into ramadas and get some new ramadas, but also increase lighting in areas where lighting has been poor over the years. And you can see this is an example of an old ramada and an old light fixture that's going to be affected. Again, this is a different process because it's community development block grant funds. Low bid is the process, and you can see the process they went since March. From March to September, they were identifying really what they needed to do. In October, after the various steps, the low bidder was AJP Electric. Again, we'll have licensed engineers that will do the electrical plans. They will also comply with dark sky and city permitting requirements, and also the evaluation of the overall project cost was part of what the low bid was. Again, the projects are identified for this because they have to be specific areas: Washington Park, Sunridge Park, El Prado Park, Maryview Park, Mariposa Park, Pierce Park, and Solano. And this is an example of a new ramada. You can see it's much more modern, and again, the materials used will last longer. It's got a nice pad underneath of it, and so that's what we're going to see in the future. And the lights underneath will be LED, and they will be 2,700. The contract amount for this is just over $2.4 million.
How did you select these parks?
These parks are in specific areas, and so they had the highest need in those communities that we could use community development block grants. And so they had to be in low mod income areas. And so when we looked at our list that we have identified of where the light areas are maybe a little insufficient, we use a situation where it's 0.2 foot candles on a walking path, or some of the ramadas didn't have lights. And so we looked at our lists where we had the most need, and we put the projects there. But we were really limited in what areas we could go to. We couldn't go to all 182 parks. There were specific areas where we targeted, so we looked at those areas.
Did crime statistics figure into this?
It really is based on what the low mod income areas are. And I'm not an expert in that, but I do have someone here if Chris wants to talk about it a little bit, about how those are selected. But I know that.
Because I'm sure everybody wants them,
Sure.
so I just.
And some
thought we needed to-
areas actually don't qualify for those funds. And again, I'm not an expert in that, but I think Chris is.
But I'm hopeful in the future this will happen in the other parks. Chris?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, the predominant basis is the low mod census tract, so it is a public facility that would be serving the low mod public. You probably have your other criteria. Certainly, there's other parks in the city beyond these 7 parks that will have needs for these, and we'll continue to look and evaluate those needs and fund them accordingly.
Okay.
And the way we are able to hit some of those other areas who maybe don't qualify for this program is through our Parks Preserve Initiative funds, and that's what we'll continue to do as well.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, we would recommend that the subcommittee recommend the contract award to AJP Electric for these particular projects.
Do you have questions or comments?
So, Inger, if you
Councilwoman?
can go back to
Absolutely.
that slide. So I think what I'm hearing is these projects, we were able to use funding from, I want to say CDBG, only because those parks qualified.
Yes.
But there is a plan to, for the other parks that also need replacement for the future.
Sure.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and some of those areas have already been replaced, as far as some of them are new parks. And so again, we have a list where we know that the worst lights, just like we do for playgrounds, things like that, these are the oldest and these are the ones that are in worst shape. And so we use that list to identify how we're going to go forward in the future. But we will continue to work with our great partners in neighborhood services to try to get any funding we can from them as well. To speak to the wattage, our old lights were 250 watts. New lights will be 40 watts. So that's going to be a significant decrease as well, as mentioned by Craig Weaver.
Now, Craig mentioned you might be adding additional lights. Is that the case?
It would only be if our foot candles were less than 0.2, in a situation where a walking path might need to have more lights put in. But again, we believe that with the engineering that we'll be able to, on a walking path, you really need to have, much like they do in streets, they have a certain foot candle that's their standard. 0.2 is our foot candle. In comparison, on a ball field, foot candle is 20 foot candles in the outfield of a ball field, 30 foot candles in the infield. So it's much less. It's a 0.2 compared to that. So it's really a lower area. So, and we've also put into the bid opportunities to add on if we had the funding to do add-ons. In the preserves, for example, we might be able to dim lights, things like that.
Any other questions? Councilwoman?
Inger, adding on additional, what are they, posts or lamp posts or lighting fixtures? Have we done a study to see if that's what we really need to do, or could we look at, now that it's 2,700 and the lighting, can we look at that and really do we need to add more poles, or will the lighting cover?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, the electrical engineers will get us to that point. They're the ones that'll do the study. They'll actually draft out where the poles need to go to get the 0.2 foot candle. That's really what we're trying to get to, is the 0.2 foot candle, not necessarily adding more lights. But if the light spread is to that degree, we'll be fine. The electrical engineers will be the experts in that, and they'll help us with that.
Okay.
And they'll be all
because they will
project
also
lighting.
be experts also in the, not necessarily the LED lighting, but understanding it
That
and
is
being
correct.
able to.
They have the ability to do that.
All right, that's where.
And it will be within the standards. And again, I think you're going to see a good product out there.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Valenzuela, did you want to make any comments?
No, Madam Chair, I'm ready to support.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Madam Chair, if I can just make one point really quick on the three items that you just approved. This one is actually posted for actions on tomorrow's council agenda because of the timing. And so this recommendation will brought forward to the council for tomorrow. The other items that you took action on today will come forward to the council on November 30th.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 8, which is the street landscape maintenance.
Yes, and so, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, staff would like to request that this item be continued to the November 29th meeting to allow some additional time to answer some questions that have come up about the process. So we would recommend continuing to get into some of those, to give some time to answer those questions, and then we can bring this back to the subcommittee on the November 29th meeting, if that's okay.
That's fine with me. I would like to ask that when you bring it back, explain what maintenance is. Does that mean you're replacing broken irrigation? Are you replacing plants? If so, off what list?
We will include that.
Thank you. I think that's all the items. Right, we have called, but we don't have any. We do have 2 cards. Actually, I think they're both the same person. Laurel?
Good morning, Chairman Williams and council members. My name is Laurel Arndt. I'm a resident of District 6. I live in Ahwatukee. I'm an environmental planner, and I'm a past member of the Ahwatukee Village Planning Committee. The reason I'm here today is to make a request of the subcommittee to be looking at a streets issue regarding a trailhead that we have in Ahwatukee. As you may know, you may not know actually, we have a trailhead called War Paint. It has always been seen as a community, a neighborhood trailhead for the last 20, 30 years. But it's recently evolved into more of a community neighborhood trailhead where people have come to park there, and it's more of a destination. This trailhead is the only trailhead between Pima Canyon on the east side and Telegraph Pass on the west side, an 8-mile stretch. It's the only official designated trailhead. So you can see where I'm going at. It's a burdened trailhead already. The city owns that property there and some adjacent property. The Ahwatukee Board of Management and the HOA own some property, and there are 5 private parcels across from the trailhead. Those empty parcels have been in existence they've been empty, but in the last 2 to 6 years we've had some development there, and one is under construction right now. On October 24th, an aggressive confrontation was had between a park user and the developer of the one parcel. The developer told the user he was parking illegally, and he threatened to punch him in the face. There is no parking signs there, and for the last 10 years, we have all honored that as users of the park, and there has been adequate parking for us to park in, and we've all coexisted quite well. I'll get into some other scenarios. The police were called. In fact, they've been called 3 times because of this gentleman and his property development. I was alerted by one of the person who this happened to, is a cyclist like me, and I called the Parks Department and spoke to the people that I've always spoken to because I have a great relationship with the Parks people. Thank you, Inger. And we've visited this issue many times. I'm concerned that with the development of these parcels across from the trailhead, that people would begin to be upset about people parking on the street. So about 9 years ago, we actually designated that parking lot as an official warhead, and signed it so that people who moved in and built across the street would know this is a trailhead, and we were hoping to mitigate some of these issues. So Parks said, well, we're going to be investigating this matter. We actually have had a contact with the builder, and we are working on this. We are trying to put together information. We're working with Streets. They're great partners. We're working with PD. They know what's going on, and I walked away thinking, thank God Parks has it under control, but I was going to keep on top of it. About a week later, I got a call from somebody saying there's a streets person out there marking war paint, and they've just told us that there are going to be no parking signs up and down war paint the whole way in areas that we always parked at. And I was like, what could this be? I'm working with Parks. Parks is working with Streets. Streets is working with PD. We're all together, and this shouldn't be happening. So I called Parks again, and I'm embarrassed to say that they didn't know this was happening, but I'm not surprised because I know there's a disconnect and there's lack of collaboration and lack of coordination within the departments and with intra-departments. So now we find out, and I'm not going to go into the details, that a request was made on October 24th by the Ahwatukee Board of Management and a resident. I actually have that email. Very simple request that if you're going to put up signs, go ahead, we can do that. And that was the same day that this interaction happened with the developer. And a week later, we have a streets person out there marking the street, and a week later, we're supposed to have signs. No public process, no communication with Parks Department. Fortunately, Parks Department did get on top of it, found out that there was a work order in place, put it into the work order. A lot of things have happened, and we're all in a statement of nothing going on right now. But the reason I bring this to you is because 10 years ago, this thing happened where a resident called the streets department and a sign went up. And then 2 years later, a resident called the department, and I know that resident because they were one of the builders and they were a friend of mine, and said, we don't want people parking in front of our property while it's being built. Have no problem with that. My point is that we cannot have this knee-jerk reaction from Streets Department, putting signs up without a public process, engaging the Parks Department in an area that they technically should have jurisdiction on. In addition to that, down the road, a sign has also gone up saying no trailhead parking in residence area, in addition to the conflicting signs that say no parking here. All of this has gone on with absolutely no discussion with the Parks Department, and I feel that that is not honorable and it's not in the spirit. Now, this is only one situation. I don't doubt it's happening everywhere in the city, so I am asking the subcommittee to coordinate with Streets to actually put signs in that say that you can park here for trailhead parking, not the no parking signs, but to work together and begin to define these areas in a proactive way instead of a reactive way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe you probably took the notes on that, and will coordinate and investigate and find out what's going on and resolve this matter.
Yes, Chairwoman, we will follow up, and we will also provide briefings to the subcommittee members on the status.
Uh,
I have another card too, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. You have two issues, or is this, you just want to double type?
I have so many issues. I have so many issues. This one I'll make very quickly. I've been in communication with the Streets Department in Thomas Ream regarding a traffic issue on Liberty Lane that will be complicated by the construction of South Mountain 202. I received a note last week from Connect 202 saying that there would be no further investigation on a traffic analysis on Liberty Lane. This is a street that has 4 schools on it, and with the closing of 32nd Street access off of Pecos Road, we're going to have some serious traffic. I was very disappointed to hear that I followed up with Tom and I wrote a letter to Theresa Gunn. What really has me here is that literally the very next day there was an article in our Ahwatukee paper that expressed all the work that the Streets Department is doing with the residents of Lakewood, which is on the east side of 32nd Street. I'm on the west side of 32nd Street. I was shocked when I saw them working hand in hand with Lakewood about a circular street that goes in their neighborhood. I used to live there. But yet ADOT and the city won't really look meaningfully at Liberty Lane, which will be so dreadfully impacted because there will be cut through traffic, and there are there's 5 schools there if you look at the other side of Liberty Lane. And so again, I'm just asking for parity in conversation and to understand what's going on when one side is doing one thing and the other side is doing the other. Here we have the city working with one community, and on the other side, and ADOT, and on the other side, you know, we don't know what's going on. There's no traffic analysis. Sorry, we're not going to deal with this until the freeway's done. Well, what about the construction time and everything? So I made this request when I sat on the South Mountain Citizen Advisory Committee 8 years ago, and they told us that they would handle it in the EIS and it would be handled in design. We met at the meetings that they had. Mr. Dovolino was there. We brought these issues up to him and Ben Sprago. Nothing has happened for 6 months. And here I get a letter today or Monday saying, sorry, we're not going to do anything until the freeway's done. Then we'll look at Liberty Lane. So I also encourage you to have your staff look at that and work with the citizens to decide how that design, because I know they're working with the city, can be made to help the community and the students in the area. Thanks.
Thank you. And I believe we have a person, Tom Remus, who is supposed to be working with the community. So could you please assign this to him to work with Ray and the neighborhood and resolve the matter?
Yes, we will do that,
I think
Chairwoman.
it's a little late to wait till the freeway's completed. So, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Do you have any future items that you want?
I did, but I forgot what I was, so go
That's
ahead.
Do you have any future items? Vice Mayor?
Just as we, at our next agenda, we are already talking about utility coordination on pavement cuts. And if we could just add a slide or two generally about coordinating projects.
Departments and agencies?
Yes. Beyond pavement cuts.
Okay.
Just a slide or two. I thought about in a separate agenda item, but I think they're already so related that we could probably.
Related to the issue you brought up earlier. Yes.
Right, they are. Hearing no further business, we are adjourned.